Charm is magnetic, it draws attention, it lights up a room for a moment, but it is fleeting. People admire charm in the moment, yet when the moment passes, the memory of it tends to fade because charm often lives on the surface. Respect, on the other hand, goes deeper. It reaches into the fabric of someone's dignity and affirms their worth in a way charm never can. When a man carries himself with respect and shows respect to others, that becomes unforgettable because it touches something fundamental, our human need to feel valued, safe, and seen without judgment. Respect lingers long after charm has disappeared because respect isn't about performance, it is about principle. Charm is often about being liked, winning approval, or creating an impression. Respect is about honoring someone's humanity, whether there's an audience or not. It doesn't rely on charisma, good looks, or clever words. It is the decision to treat others with care, to acknowledge their boundaries, to see them as equal in worth and deserving of honesty and kindness. This is why respect becomes the deeper memory, because it shapes how a person feels about themselves when they're around you. Charm may get someone's attention, but respect earns trust. Trust is the currency of any relationship, personal or professional, and it cannot be faked. A charming smile can create excitement, but if it is not backed with respect, the excitement turns into disappointment. Respect, however, builds a foundation. It tells the other person, you matter. You are worthy of being treated with dignity. That foundation doesn't crumble easily, which is why people remember it long after the details of what was said or done fade away. Consider how respect shows up in the small things. Listening without interrupting, valuing someone's time by being present, speaking truth without belittling, choosing not to exploit vulnerability. These aren't glamorous actions. They don't get applause, but they leave a permanent impression because they make the other person feel safe. Safety is rare, and when someone experiences it, they don't forget it. Respect is remembered because it answers a quiet but urgent question every human being carries. Am I seen? Do I matter? Charm might distract from that question temporarily, but respect answers it definitively. A man who respects consistently doesn't need to put on a performance. He doesn't need to charm his way into situations because his reliability and integrity already open doors. People gravitate toward him not because of his sparkle, but because of his steadiness. They know he can be trusted not just when things are easy, but when pressure mounts. This consistency makes him unforgettable because very few embody it. The world has plenty of charmers, but far fewer men who make respect their core value. Respect also has a compounding effect. The more someone gives it, the more it deepens the connection. Over time, it shapes how people talk about that person even in his absence. Charm can generate stories of amusement. He was fun, he was entertaining, but respect generates stories of impact. He made me feel valued, he treated me with dignity. Those are the kinds of memories that last a lifetime. The truth is, charm doesn't demand much discipline. It comes naturally to some, it can be learned by others, but it rarely requires sacrifice. Respect does. Respect requires self-control, humility, patience, and empathy. It asks a man to consider another's perspective even when it clashes with his own. It requires holding back from proving superiority and instead choosing understanding. That is not easy, which is why it leaves such a powerful memory when lived out consistently. Respect is not grand, but it is timeless. It is the quiet force that outlives trends, looks, and cleverness. It doesn't just make someone feel good in the moment, it gives them something they carry with them long after. The feeling of being seen, heard, and valued as they are. That is why respect is remembered longer than charm, because respect is not about the man giving it, but about the person receiving it, and people never forget those who made them feel truly human. Promises are easy to make because they live in the future in a space that requires no immediate sacrifice. Words flow freely when they are not tested by circumstance, and intentions sound noble when no action is demanded in the present moment. Presence, however, is costly. It asks for time, for attention, for energy, for the willingness to put aside distractions and be fully available. That is why presence speaks louder than promises. Anyone can say, I'll be there, but only the one who shows up fully and consistently creates trust that outlasts words. When someone is present, they are not simply filling space, they are making an investment. To be present means to put away the phone, to silence the noise of obligations, and to signal through action that the person in front of you matters more than anything else competing for your attention. Presence communicates value. It says, you are important enough for me to give the most limited resource I have, my time. Promises can create anticipation, but presence creates security. It is in the lived moment, not in the projected future. That trust is built. There is a reason broken promises sting so deeply. When words are not backed by presence, disappointment takes root. It is not the failure of logistics that hurts most, it is the sense of not being prioritized. On the other hand, when presence is delivered, even without grand words, it creates assurance. Trust grows not because of what was said, because of what was demonstrated. It is the actions that confirm the truth of the words, and in the absence of actions, words become hollow. Presence has another quality that promises lack. It grounds people in reality. Promises live in imagination, but presence is tangible. When someone shows up in times of difficulty, in moments of celebration, or even in ordinary daily interactions, they etch themselves into memory. People rarely remember all the words that were spoken, but they never forget who stood beside them when it mattered most. Presence becomes the evidence of care, and evidence always outweighs intention. True presence also requires courage because it is easier to hide behind promises than to step into someone else's reality. Being present means facing discomfort, sharing in struggles, and sometimes carrying burdens that are not your own. It demands empathy and the willingness to be inconvenienced. Yet this is precisely why presence speaks so loudly. It shows a commitment that goes beyond convenience. Promises without presence may sound sweet, but they require no sacrifice. Presence demands sacrifice, and that sacrifice is remembered. There is also power in presence during silence. Not every situation requires words, solutions, or explanations. Sometimes the simple act of sitting with someone, of being available without rushing to fill the air, communicates more than any speech could. It says, "You are not alone." In those moments, presence carries a weight that promises never can. Promises attempt to assure, but presence embodies assurance. Consistency amplifies presence. Showing up once may be appreciated, but showing up consistently builds an unshakable foundation of trust. Each act of presence reinforces the last, creating a pattern that others come to rely on. Reliability is the essence of trust, and reliability is proven not in promises made, but in presence maintained. Over time, this consistent presence becomes a defining characteristic, something unforgettable because it is rare. The truth is, promises require little effort, presence requires commitment. Promises can be broken with excuses, presence proves itself without explanation. A man who is present writes his legacy not in what he intends to do, but in what he actually does, not in words spoken about tomorrow, but in actions lived today. That is why presence will always speak louder than promises, because presence does not ask to be believed. It shows itself, and once it is shown, it cannot be forgotten. Strength impresses in the moment, but it is consistency that builds the foundation of safety. A single display of strength can capture attention, but if it is not followed by reliability, it leaves uncertainty. People do not feel safe because of what someone can do once. They feel safe because they know what someone will do every time. Safety is not born from unpredictability, no matter how powerful the gestures might be. It grows from a steady pattern, from the quiet assurance that when it matters most, the person will be there in the same dependable way. Consistency removes doubt. It takes away the questions that silently erode trust. Will he show up this time? Will he follow through? Will he keep his word? When someone proves through action after action that they can be relied on, those doubts vanish. Reliability is the true measure of strength because it shows discipline, self-control, and commitment. A strong man who is unreliable leaves people anxious, but a consistent man, even if he is not the loudest or most forceful, creates an environment where others can rest without fear. Safety has less to do with physical protection and more to do with emotional stability. People feel safe when they know they can trust what to expect. Chaos and unpredictability create insecurity, but consistency builds a rhythm that makes relationships secure. When someone's actions align day after day, trust deepens because there are no surprises to fear. This is why consistency builds safety. It signals that the person is not governed by mood, by convenience, or by impulse, but by principle. Inconsistency, on the other hand, undermines even the strongest displays of affection or commitment. One day of care followed by a week of absence confuses and unsettles. A promise kept once but forgotten the next creates uncertainty. People cannot anchor themselves to inconsistency. They can only cling to it while waiting for the inevitable disappointment. Consistency, however, becomes the anchor itself. It gives others something firm to hold on to, something that does not shift with time or circumstance. Consistency is also a language of respect. It communicates that others are worth the effort of discipline. By showing up again and again, not just in moments of convenience but in moments of difficulty, a man says without words, "You can count on me." That assurance is one of the deepest human needs. Everyone longs for stability, for a place where they can lower their guard, know they will not be let down. Consistency fulfills that longing. It is not grand gestures that create this safety. It is often the simple, repeated acts that matter most. Being on time, keeping commitments, listening when it's easier to dismiss, showing up when it's easier to make excuses. These may seem small, but they accumulate into something powerful. Over time, they create a reputation. They shape how others think and feel whenever that person is near. The memory of strength fades, but the record of consistency endures. Consistency also builds confidence for the future. When someone has shown reliability over and over, people stop questioning and start trusting instinctively. They know that tomorrow will look like yesterday, not in monotony, but in reliability. This creates the freedom to focus on growth, on connection, on building something meaningful, because energy is no longer wasted on worrying about whether the foundation will hold. That is the true safety consistency brings, the ability to move forward without fear of collapse. Strength may shine in moments, but consistency transforms moments into a legacy. It is the daily proof that words and promises are not empty, that reliability is not conditional, that safety is not just an idea, but a lived experience. Safety is not built in bursts of greatness. It is built in the steady rhythm of reliability, in the unwavering commitment to be counted on every single time. Most men hear, but few truly listen, and that difference changes everything. Hearing is passive, it registers sound, it catches words, but it doesn't go deeper. Listening, on the other hand, requires attention, presence, and a willingness to set aside one's own agenda to fully understand another. Listening is not simply about absorbing information, it is about valuing the speaker. That is why the one who truly listens leaves an unforgettable mark. People never forget the rare moments when they felt completely understood. Listening creates legacy because it touches one of the deepest human desires, the need to be seen and acknowledged. Everyone carries unspoken thoughts, fears, and dreams. When someone listens, not just waiting for their turn to reply, but genuinely taking in what is being shared, it gives the other person the gift of significance. It says, what you think matters, what you feel is important, who you are deserves attention. This act alone can change the course of a relationship because it replaces loneliness with connection. A man who listens stands out because he resists the urge to dominate conversations with advice, solutions, or stories of his own. Instead, he leans in, pays attention, and asks questions that prove he cares about the meaning behind the words. This kind of listening goes beyond courtesy. It is a demonstration of respect. It builds trust without forcing it. It makes the other person feel not like a problem to be solved, but like a human to be understood. That is why listening is remembered long after clever words are forgotten. True listening requires discipline, because it means quieting the noise in one's own mind. It demands patience to hear beyond the surface, to notice tone, emotion, and pauses. Many hear only enough to respond. Few listen deeply enough to empathize. Empathy is the fruit of listening, and empathy is what leaves a permanent impact. People may forget compliments, they may forget gifts, but they do not forget the feeling of being heard when they were vulnerable. Listening also builds influence. Those who listen carefully often gain insight others miss. They understand not only what is said, but what is meant. They notice the emotions hidden between words, the contradictions, the unspoken fears. This understanding gives them the ability to respond with wisdom instead of assumption. Over time, people seek them out, not because they have the loudest voice, but because they have the clearest ear. Their influence grows not from speaking more, but from listening better. When listening becomes a habit, it shapes the memory people carry. Years later, someone may not recall the details of what was discussed, but they will remember how deeply they were listened to. They will remember the relief of being understood without judgment, the comfort of knowing someone cared enough to slow down and give them space. That memory becomes part of the listener's legacy. Legacies are not built only through achievements or grand actions, but through the way lives were touched in small, meaningful moments. Listening is also an act of humility. It acknowledges that one's own perspective is not the only one that matters. By prioritizing another's voice, a man demonstrates strength without arrogance. He shows that he does not need to dominate to matter, that he values connection more than control. This humility does not weaken his presence, it strengthens it, because people trust those who listen more than those who only speak. The world is filled with noise, voices competing to be heard, opinions being broadcast constantly. In such a world, the listener becomes rare and powerful. Rare because it is uncommon to find someone who truly pays attention. Powerful because listening builds bonds stronger than persuasion or argument ever could. That is why listening creates legacy. The one who listens imprints not just words but feelings into memory, leaving a mark that outlasts time and outshines everything else. Grand gestures have their place, but they often shine brightly and fade quickly. They impress in the moment, but memory tends to blur their edges with time. What lingers are the small acts, the thoughtful details, the little kindnesses that speak directly to the heart without fanfare. These moments often seem ordinary at the time, yet they carry immense weight because they communicate genuine care. A grand performance might capture attention, but a small act of kindness creates a memory that endures. Small acts matter because they are personal. They show that someone paid attention, noticed the details, and cared enough to act on them. Remembering a preference, offering help without being asked, noticing when someone is struggling and stepping in quietly. These things may take only seconds, but they stay imprinted for years. They prove that the relationship is not built on showmanship, but on attentiveness. Grand gestures often serve the giver. Small acts serve the one receiving them. That difference changes how they are remembered. A man who builds his character around small acts creates a steady current of impact. He doesn't wait for big opportunities to prove his care. He proves it in everyday ways. Holding the door, listening without distraction, writing a note, checking in consistently. These are not acts that make headlines, but they create trust and warmth. People rarely remember every celebration or speech, but they always remember how they were treated in ordinary moments. Small kindnesses, repeated over time, stack into a legacy far greater than a single dramatic event. The weight of small acts also comes from their timing. A simple word of encouragement when someone is doubtful, a quiet presence when someone feels alone, or a genuine acknowledgement when someone feels unseen can transform their entire day, sometimes even their entire perspective. These moments do not require grand effort, yet they arrive like lifelines. When remembered later, they shine brighter than any elaborate effort because they came when they were most needed. Small acts are also difficult to fake. A grand gesture can be rehearsed, planned, and displayed for recognition, but small acts reveal true character. They show who someone is when no one is watching. The person who picks up after themselves, who treats a stranger with courtesy, who gives without expecting return, who notices the unnoticed. These actions reveal authenticity. And authenticity is what makes an impression that lasts. There is humility in small acts. They don't demand attention, and that is why they resonate so deeply. When someone receives kindness with no strings attached, with no expectation of applause, it feels real. It speaks not to the ego, but to the soul. This is why people hold on to those memories long after they've forgotten the larger events. The quiet acts whisper louder in the heart than the loud gestures ever could. Over time, small acts compound. One act of kindness may seem small, but repeated over months and years, they form a foundation of trust and affection. Relationships are built less on moments of grandeur and more on countless small proofs of care. Just as drops of water carve stone, small acts shape memory and loyalty. They endure because they become a pattern, a reflection of consistency and sincerity. Small acts carry immense weight because they align with what people truly crave, not spectacle but sincerity. They don't require wealth, status, or talent, only attention and intention. And in a world where many chase recognition through big gestures, the one who quietly offers small kindness stands apart. It is those acts that echo longest, not because they demanded attention, but because they gave something far more valuable, proof that someone genuinely cared. Integrity is not loud, it does not announce itself, it does not need decoration or applause. It exists quietly in the alignment between what a man says and what he does. It is the unseen anchor that keeps trust from drifting, the silent strength that holds relationships steady when everything else feels uncertain. When words and actions align, people do not just hear promises, they see proof. That proof builds a foundation so solid that it becomes unforgettable. Trust formed this way is not fragile, because it is built on reality rather than appearances. Integrity is remembered because it is rare. Many can speak beautifully, make promises with conviction, or display charm with ease. But when those words are tested, few stand unwavering. Integrity is revealed not in the moments when it is easy to be honest, but in the moments when honesty costs something. Choosing to act in alignment with words, even when it brings inconvenience or sacrifice, is what separates integrity from performance. That is why people remember it. They remember the one who did what he said he would do, who lived his values even when no one was watching. The power of integrity lies in its consistency. A single act of honesty may inspire, but when honesty is a pattern, it creates unshakable confidence. People know where they stand with a man of integrity. They do not have to second-guess his motives or question his reliability. This certainty allows them to feel safe, because they know that deception, manipulation, or betrayal are not hidden beneath the surface. Safety is built not on strength alone, but on the assurance that a man's word is dependable, and integrity provides that assurance. When words and actions align, the gap between appearance and reality disappears. That alignment creates trust because it proves authenticity. Authenticity is not about perfection, it is about being real, consistent, and reliable. People do not expect flawlessness, but they do expect honesty. Integrity tells them that even when mistakes happen, the truth will not be buried and accountability will not be avoided. That kind of transparency earns loyalty in a way charm or strength never can. Integrity also shapes reputation. Over time, people talk about not just what someone achieved, but how they lived. Stories of integrity spread because they carry weight. They inspire confidence and respect, and they define how others remember a person long after moments of brilliance have faded. Grand successes might impress, but integrity creates legacy. It ensures that memories are not tainted with doubt or regret, but instead reinforced with admiration. There is also a quiet strength in integrity that others lean on. When storms come and uncertainty shakes everything else, people look to the one whose actions and words have always aligned. His steadiness becomes a refuge, his reliability a comfort. This anchoring effect does not require speeches or declarations. It is felt in the calm assurance that he can be counted on. That silent strength is what makes integrity unforgettable. Integrity demands discipline because it requires aligning not just in public but in private. It requires making choices consistent with values when no one else will see or applaud. It asks for restraint when shortcuts are tempting and courage when honesty is costly. These choices rarely draw attention in the moment, but they accumulate to a powerful force that shapes how others experience and remember someone. The impact of integrity is not momentary but lasting. Words fade, promises are forgotten, but the memory of someone whose actions matched his words remains. People do not forget the safety, respect, and trust they felt in the presence of integrity. It is a silent anchor, invisible yet undeniable, that holds relationships firm and builds a legacy that endures far beyond the moment.